Unser nächster Gast, also ursprünglich und auf dem Programm war angekündigt Peter van Böhmen, habe ich wahrscheinlich auch falsch gesagt, der kurzfristig abgesagt hat, aber wir haben sicher mindestens gleichwertigen Ersatz, vielleicht sogar jemanden, der noch näher an unseren Themen dran ist, mit Cecilia Raspanti. Auch ihr Vortrag wird Englisch stattfinden. Cecilia Raspanti is a fashion and textile designer and a digital fabrication expert. She is the co-founder of the Textile Lab Amsterdam and co-initiator of the educational program Textile Academy at Waag Society. She leads the creative research and technological development of new concepts and alternatives for the textile and clothing industry. She focuses on translating traditional craftsmanship techniques and small production processes into digital fabrication opportunities to facilitate the access of these technologies for a broader public. I'm very curious about your lecture, Textiles Between Craftsmanship, Research and Innovation, Futures of Dynamic Education. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. So we're going to talk about textiles. Stefan was saying my background is fashion and textile design, and somewhere along the way I walked into a fab lab and fell in love with digital fabrication. Yeah, thank you. So textiles are everywhere. They're one of the first things we get in touch with when we're born. We are wrapped in them, we use them to screen ourselves from the environment and from other individuals. We are in contact with hundreds of them constantly, every day, and most of the time we don't even notice. They're just there, they're a seamless part of our environment. But they're man-made, we make them. We take fibers and we turn them into yarn and then into textiles. And they come into hundreds of different textures, colors, weights, type of fibers. Sometimes they're organic, sometimes they're man-made, they're sometimes knitted, they're sometimes woven. They're a re-elaboration of hundreds of years of knowledge, of craftsmanship that we passed on through generations. I mean, there was no textiles at some point. We made it. We came up with these techniques. And as a fashion and textile designer, my fascination for materials and textiles in general goes beyond any possible imagination. I mean, before even buying something, looking at a garment or at a sofa or at a curtain, the first impulse of individuals that have my same profession is like to touch the material and to understand how it's made. And you do this unconsciously. You don't do this like, oh, what is it made of? No, it's a kind of push that you have, and you analyze the material through your hands, through your eyes, and when you don't know how the material is made, you have this incredible rush to understand, oh my God, how do they make this? What is it made of? What's the process behind it? How do they connect these things? This means that our environments daily are actually a sort of playfield, a sort of playground for textile and fashion designers, because we continue learning daily by touching and looking at the environments around us. But taking a step backwards and looking at the way we're actually educated, we're educated in a very traditional way. We go to school, we take notes, there is an expert that teaches us things. We try to understand the notes we take and embody them and make them our own concepts. And we're trained to become one day experts ourselves, which is kind of a weird setting if we look at how the world is built today. In education, in creative education, even the most creative types where we're really learning by doing and we're sewing and we're making materials and we're weaving and knitting, we still asked every day, who are you? What is your story? What's pushing you? What's your signature? You need to find a way of coming out of the crowd and have your own way of seeing the world. And this creates somehow a very competitive environment. It puts in our mind a thing like, oh my God, this is my idea. I need to keep it and protect it, and somebody else might take it and steal it from me. But this is a very weird concept again. I mean, how did we get to the point where we have to protect our ideas because somebody else might take them? Ideas are not really our own. I mean, the way we connect concepts is. But ideas are based on our experience, our knowledge, everything we get in contact with, people, the environment, everything builds up our own ideas. And somewhat this makes the idea of hoarding ideas a very crazy one. I quite like this image. This represents for me like a sort of mental way we are trained. It's a sort of private cabinet of curiosities that we create in our heads when we want to hide our ideas and close them up. But if we don't replenish our ideas, if we don't share them, at some point we open these cabinets and they're kind of empty. So sometimes the way we construct education today makes us hoarders of information rather than people who share them and grow together. If ideas are actually based on our knowledge and thus on our experience, and we will create a shared pool of information, actually ideas will grow much faster. Evolution in concepts will grow in a completely different way. And in the current systems, this is hard. This is often very difficult. There is a beautiful quote from Jeremy Rifkin in his book, Empathic Civilization, that actually reads, "The traditional assumption that knowledge is power and is used for personal gain is being subsumed by the notion that knowledge is an expression of the shared responsibilities for the collective well-being of humanity and the planet as a whole." This actually puts things in a completely different perspective. If we would really do this, we will have a completely different world. At Werk Society, we have the aim to put this into practice. We are a research institute for art, science, and technology. What we try to do is actually connect these three in every possible way to the sort of like faces of society, to create social impact, to empower people through technology, give them the access and actually find out things together, create moments of conversation and co-design with different people at different levels. We do this We do this through 6 different themes. Some of them are concept labs, some of them are actual physical labs. We have creative care, which tries to impact the health and care systems, trying to talk to patients, institutions, doctors, therapists, and put them into a sort of conversation and try to co-create solutions together. Creative learning does the same with educational bodies. Future Heritage does this with knowledge institutes and museums. Future Internet tries to give access to broader public to actually what's privacy, what is big data, what actually is the Internet and how it works. And then we have our physical labs. We have beautiful open wet lab, which is a biology labs. And we have the Textile and the Fab Lab Amsterdam, which are the places where we explore much more the making side. Last year, we had the opportunity, together with my colleague Issa Boshart, to open the Textile Lab Amsterdam. It's a place that aims to embody all of these things in one place, attract experts and curious, where nobody is somehow an expert, but we all are, and we're all learning and teaching from each other. It's a place where we try to address these issues into the textile and clothing industry, the second most polluting industry on Earth. And there is very little change happening in this industry. And the more we dive into it, and the more we meet people in this field, they're all saying we need change, and we don't know anymore how to. So as I was saying, we opened it last year, September 6th. And together with that, we also created an educational program called Textile Academy, which has exactly the same aim. We try to experiment with craftsmanship, heritage, technology, digital fabrication, and biology. We share the knowledge, and we try to push the boundaries of textile and clothing industry. It was a 16 weeks program that actually was sort of inspired by my own path, in the sense that one day I walked into the Fab Lab as a fashion and textile designer with a very traditional craftsmanship education. And all of a sudden, this like world of possibilities opened up to me, and I just couldn't believe it. They invited me to do my research project there, which ended up being a collection of 8 garments. All of them actually are the embodiment of craftsmanship techniques translated into digital fabrication, because the worst thing with craftsmanship that we see at the moment is that our heritage is disappearing. There are so many techniques that are so expensive to be produced that people say, we can't have it. I'm sorry, it's just too expensive. When we translate these through technologies, or we share the knowledge of these techniques through technology, we're actually able of keeping these techniques alive, of keeping our own heritage alive, build up knowledge of hundreds of years. This was the collection, and all of the patterns are actually inspired by nature, by a beautiful book of Ernst Haeckel. It's called Art Forms in Nature, and all of the patterns in it are extremely geometrical and extremely organic, of course. And all of them were applied both in structural ways and in decorative ways. But most of it, they were trying to prove the concept that we can keep those techniques alive through digital fabrication or through technology by using machines like CNC milling machines or laser cutters or plotters, and of course softwares. But there comes a point where like learning and exploring yourself isn't enough anymore. Like, you need to transfer this knowledge because this will feed into you. There is this beautiful process of like learning and teaching continuously that fulfills you and the people around you, because if you share everything you know, you will be filled with new knowledge every day, and you kind of have the need of replenish your own knowledge, because if you give away everything, you need something new to come back, so you need to research again, and that makes you push things. So we took my kind of path through from traditional crafts to digital fabrication. We analyzed it, we broke it up into pieces, and we created 16 classes. We started in September and we ended in January, and this is always one of my favorite images, because the first assignment of the students was actually to scan their own bodies, slice them up into pieces, a bit like this, and then make their own mannequins. And this wasn't just to have a mannequin that looks like you. This was also to put them in front of the fact that textile and clothing field made standardizations. We created along the way standardizations that were completely ridiculous. Sizes make absolutely no sense anymore in a world where we have 3D scanners and 3D printers and laser cutters where we could produce everything in a completely different way. So after they made the bodies, we put them in front of them. So you said, you all have a medium. What do your bodies look like? Are they the same? And they were all laughing. It's like, no, everything is like in different places. How are we still buying medium when we can 3D scan and have perfectly fitting clothing? I said, yeah, I don't know. This is, well, we're having this class. So every class was a sort of like conversation and putting them in front of things that we're used to, that we discovered along the way, and that we were wondering about and thinking like, how did this happen? How is this possible? We explored also laser cutting with modular patterns to create clothing or patterns, or some students made chairs, some people made lamps, just to create modular pattern that can fit into each other and actually can be recomposed in every possible shape. And again, this is really easy once you have the right softwares and once you're working with laser cutters. But the whole program always has a sort of like, take a step back and look where we come from, look at where we are today, and look where we want to go. So in the dyeing industry, it's a part of the textile industry where nobody talks about, and it's such an important process. I mean, each one of us today is wearing some kind of garment in some kind of color, but nobody tells you how this garment has been dyed. If you want to buy an organic shirt, organic cotton shirt, you can, but nobody will tell you how they dyed it. It's a bit weird again. It's like, how did we get to the point that we're interested where the fibers come from, but then we skip all of the, or we hide all of the processes that are chemically harmful for the environment. So we explore natural dyeing because it's our heritage. It's how we used to dye textiles and fibers. And there is no chemicals involved in that. Why did we completely lose this? Companies will tell you that they're not fit to standardization. What? How is that a point? How can we buy jeans that are 600 euros and that are unique and ruined in a specific way, and they have a label that says this garment will change along the way with you, but then when a t-shirt starts fading color, we are not okay with it. They change, we change. It's about life, it's about process, it's about things evolving. Then we analyze all of the chemicals that are used today in the dyeing industry. And then we took a sort of futuristic step. We tried to find an alternative to this way of dyeing. If natural dyes wasn't the right solutions, what else is out there? Well, in the last 1.5 years, the Textile Lab and the Open Wet Lab have been experimenting together about dyeing textiles with bacteria, growing and living bacteria. And they are perfect. They are a perfect solution. And it's every time I spoke about it before we actually had tested results, everybody was laughing. It's like, Cecilia, really? Bacteria dyeing? No. This can't be a solution. This can't be upscalable. I said, I don't know. It works. So this was actually 10 of the students. They had these very big Petri dishes. They inoculated the plates. And the first 2 days, you don't see anything, so they were all a bit skeptical. And then day 3, you have this explosion of color all over the dish, and everybody's like, wow, it's actually true, it works. And they start washing it and rinsing it and ironing it, and they're like, it stays. Why are we not using this in the industry? Again, I don't know. And this is another example of a different color. And then we explored some 3D printing by itself and on textiles. So they also learned how to 3D model. And these examples that you see here are actually to create self-foldable structures, or structures that are in tension by themselves. By stretching Lycra and 3D printing on them, you can create shapes that are three-dimensional, and you don't need anything to assemble it. And this was more or less sort of the Textile Academy program, but the Textile Lab also explores other things. To support this academy, we actually need tools that don't exist, or readaptations of tools that exist. So we often also start hacking tools. So we started a whole research program also about this. And this is the work of one of our students last year, which made me really happy. I always wanted a vacuum former, but a big one, seriously big one. And I needed it to be modular. We had all these ideas about it, and the only one we had found was incredibly expensive. So we thought, no, okay, we can't do this. So we found Lucas. He is training to be a mechanical engineer, and when we spoke about this, he said, this is totally doable. I have a small one at my school. I know how they're made. I know what they do. We can make one. This is the combination of the different labs. As you saw before, like we were playing around in the Open Wet Lab, and this was the communication much more with the Digital Fabrication Lab, with the Fab Lab. And he built us a beautiful vacuum former, and it works. So it's not only about teaching and learning in a different way. It's about a completely different way of seeing things where everything is possible. And when tools are not there off the shelf, you can make them yourself. All of this is also part of a European project. It's called TCBL, means Textile and Clothing Business Labs. Because what we do locally, we also believe should be scaled up globally or at this level, on a European level. So what we're trying to create with TCBL is actually a network, a collaborative network, a bottom-up one, where 17 partners through Europe are experimenting together, creating or facilitating laboratories, innovation labs, like the Textile Lab. There is other labs in Athens. There's some here in there is some here. There is some in Italy. We have some in Slovenia. They're all across the world. And this is our platform, and this is where you can actually find us and explore all the different facilities that these laboratories give. And projects like these are actually the ones that allow us to research more in depth, things like bioshades. This is a case about bacteria dyeing that we're now leading together with the Making Lab Athens. We're exploring, is it actually possible to scale this up? Can we bring this a next step? Can the industry benefit of this? And if all of this knowledge is collaborative, is open, it's there to be taken, will it create a change? Not only in education, in everybody, in the industry. Will it impact it? What will it do? So these were some more experiments we did with them. And it's interesting because it's actually happening. We're actually trying to find different universities across Europe who are scaling this up. They're trying to grow them in different ways. We're sharing the results, and we're finding out together what's the best way of doing this. And this is extremely exciting, not only for us, but for the industry that says, like, okay, so, but then, are you going to patent it once it works? Can I still have access? What are we going to do? I said, no, it's there, it's for you. But then if you implement it, let us know how it works. We're a research institute. What we are interested in is actually seeing this change happen. And of course, we need to find ways of doing this together, because just by ourselves, we're not going very far. We need these collaborative networks of institutions, students, teachers, industry, manufacturers, and consumers to make this change happen at every possible level. And textiles, as I was saying, are everywhere. We are part of the whole textile and clothing industry that we want to or not, because we're wearing them, we have curtains at home, towels, bed sheets, everything. So where we see this going is actually trying to scale all of this up globally. Not only cases like this, but also educational programs. What we're trying to do now is trying to create a local type of education scaling up globally. And of course, many of you have been hearing about doing classes online and these kind of things, which is always pretty abstract, because if you're not actually making yourself, if you don't have like a continuous conversation with the other people that are following the class, it's really weird. And you can, if you're at home alone, does it work? I'm never sure. It always sort of freaks me out. So based on all of these ideas, what we're trying to do now is actually having labs that locally will teach and enable people to come together and have these kind of conversations and scale up our prototype of 16 classes into a worldwide one, where altogether we will have conversations weekly, teachers, students, and feeding each other, sharing all of the outcomes, even the unexpected ones, which again are not errors, are just different outcomes, to find new solutions, alternatives to grow together. Thank you.